This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. Actually, it's kind of cold and foggy where I am, but it's at least brighter than it was a few hours ago. So it's sunnier. It's also Super Bowl Sunday, I think, isn't it? I don't know. I don't pay attention to sports that much, unless it's curling. Curling is the only sport. Curling is the ultimate sport. It's the ultimate competition. It's so interesting to watch. Women yipping down a field of ice and brooming themselves into glory. There's probably some innuendos there somewhere. I don't know. Either way, how are you guys doing this morning? Hope you're all doing well. Who's joining me for this adventure into world-spanning DEI? Why, that would be Dax, Lord Sovereign. Good morning. TC, good morning. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Noah Asensio, good morning. Keeverdam, good morning. Somnamnul Nation, good morning. Derek LaRue, thank you so much once again for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. And again, I have to say, you're looking quite fetching with your haircut and your beardy beard. So thank you so much. Hope you're having a good morning so far. Jack Thursby, good morning. And I think that's, oh wait, then chat jumped because of course it did. Jamie Melquist, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. A2P, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Mike Savage, blarg. And those ain't real, dude. Good morning. If you say so. All right. I think I'm real. Am I real? Let's have an existential crisis right now. Well, no, the existential crisis will be finding out from the cream of the crop, the top of the heap, a number one. The masters of the universe at Davos, the World Economic Forum, held a panel discussion apparently last month or thereabouts, discussing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And boy, oh boy, I cannot wait because, I mean, I have looked at some pretty high-profile venues before, I think, maybe, like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and some colleges and things like that, and even Google at one time. But hey, now this is, you can't get much higher than this, right? These are the guys that are running everything. They have their hands on the levers of power. There's these Davos WEF weirdos. So what happens when you combine Davos and the brilliance of CNBC to present to us a presentation, present to us a panel discussion on DEI in the workplace? I don't know, but we're going to find out together. Lexi Mads, good morning. And Arc210, if I didn't already say good morning, good morning. Bearded Devil 1864, good morning. And for anybody lurking, anybody in the future, or anybody I happen to miss, I hope you're all doing well this Sunday morning. But either way, I will go for an hour and a half in real time. This runs for 42 minutes on its own. So let's find out with I'm assuming our moderator in tight pleather pants is about to tell us with her panel about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace from Davos with interestingly church-like windows in the background. Boy, oh boy, could you feel more like this is a cult or what? All right. I'm going to start out with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we'll begin. Oh, by the way, before I forget, top of the chat box, if you please set your attention there for a moment to take a look at the fundraisers for our friends Moonshock and Angry Illinoisian. They've experienced some medical catastrophes in the recent times. They could certainly use some assistance with for them and their families. If you cannot donate, completely understandable. But if you are able to share those out on social media, that would be greatly appreciated as well. Okay, with that, let us begin.
Yes, come and sit down.
Yes. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a terrific conversation lined up as we take a look at diversity and inclusion in the workplace. But
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. You guys hear that okay? Let me know. Sounds good, says Kiefer Dam. Sounds snooty, but fine, says some Namnyon Nation. Good morning, Gulf City DCC 182, and good morning, Super Koopa Gaming. Try to get some more in here as I see people pop in. All right. So, yes, a wonderful conversation with not American accents. Okay.
But also talk about some of the big labor trends we're seeing out there at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Let me introduce you to our guests on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Joining us today is Tanuj Sharami, who is the Group Head of HR at Standard Chartered. Beata Jovocek, who is the Chief Economist of EBRD, and Thomas Sauer-Essig, who is the Executive Board Member of SAP.
And I'm the grand poobah of XTV, because it's just like random 3-letter combinations and oh, here we go. All right.
Thank you for joining us. Let's dive in. There are concerns about human capital as we start out 2023. It's a challenging economic year. We're talking about changes to the amount of employees some employers are going to have this year. As we take a look at key things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, let's just set the starting point. What does 2023 look like first up, and what are the challenges ahead?
Boy, could you ask a more broad and non-specific question than that? What does 2023 look like? And you could say anything, because this took place in January, and who knows? But okay, what are our speakers' predictions for what 2023 is going to look like as far as diversity in a workplace setting? But also, I'm not an economist. I do not have my thumb on the pulse of what's going on as far as employment is concerned. Although all I'm seeing lately, though, is massive layoffs at big companies, which is interesting.
Beata, do you want to kick it off?
Well, I think there are big trends, big changes underway.
Yes.
We had the COVID pandemic, which brought about a recession, and that recession was unique in.
No, the pandemic did not bring about the recession. The ridiculous lockdowns and overreach of governments into people's lives and their ability to earn a living is what brought us the recession. It's like, blame the pandemic. No, it wasn't the pandemic. It wasn't the pandemic. It's the way it was managed and handled by the people in charge. I understand it's a very subtle turn of phrase, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything major, but it always bugs me. It's one of those pet peeves I have now when people use quote unquote the pandemic as an escape hatch for what happened to the economy and people's lives. It really bugs me.
That it led to much bigger job losses among women rather than male. And that's because it hit disproportionately services industries. While previous recessions were...
Who hit the service industries? Who hit the service industries? It wasn't the pandemic. It was the policies. And who set the policies? Again, I know. I'm belaboring it a bit, but it just really bugs me. You know, even if she's correct, and for the sake of argument, sure, service industries were hit major because people gathering in places and so on and so forth. Okay, but who did that? Not what, who?
Were hitting manufacturing much more. So that caused many women in the labor market reevaluate their jobs, rethink where they are, and some of them have not come back yet.
Tanuj, jump in here. Where do you see the starting point on these issues, and what are the challenges ahead this year?
Well, I think it's a really interesting moment in history, I feel we are in from a DEI perspective. And I think Beata spoke about it very eloquently. What I see is there is a real war for skills when it comes to the real specialized skills. And I know you will talk about it in your world. So technology.
She knows what he's going to say. She knows. Okay, she already knows what the other guy's going to say about skills. But yes, it should be about skills. But did our first speaker say anything about skills? No, she just talked about gender. She didn't talk about people's jobs or people's jobs from the service industry writ large, because, you know, there are a lot of men in the service industries as well. But either way, okay, so it's about skills, and you already know what the other guy's going to talk about. All right.
Technology, data, cyber.
Yeah.
But at the other end, we are seeing that there is a lot of change that's happening in the labor movement. So there's uncertainty around jobs. They are really sort of fear of job losses, etc. So it's a very polarized world. Within that, if you take a D&I lens, there is a real danger that as we move towards future skills, there are certain communities that get left behind. Women, ethnic minorities, people who do not have the same level of education background in some of those future focused skills.
Yes, because women and minorities have no access to education, especially women who, on average these days, earn more college degrees than men. Now, of course, you have to ask yourself, degrees in what, right? But that aside, okay, so women, just the demographic of women don't have access to the education necessary to move into higher technology jobs. Ethnic minorities. Okay, I mean, if you say so. A couple more hellos here and good morning since I'm seeing people here. Shadowclaw, good morning. Damien Gershwin. I love a Gershwin tune. That's an I love you, New York in June. I love a Gershwin tune. Yeah, anyway. Sorry. I'm a living jukebox.
I'll just share a piece of statistic. We did a piece of work where we looked at our workforce plan over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years.
Okay.
And we looked at the jobs that are going to go away because of automation, digitization, technology, and new jobs that are going to come up.
Yeah.
We then overlaid it with gender. And we realized that if we do not take any purposeful action, the percentage of women in our entire workforce will go down by 2% over the next 3 to 4 years. And that's simply because there are not enough women in the future-focused, specialized skills job where there is hot demand, and many more in jobs that are not going to be needed for the future. So it's a really interesting time.
How would you solve for that problem? Is what? Okay, this comes back to the old conflict between what you want to see versus personal choice. Okay, so is it the fact that you don't have enough women in these jobs because there's some overarching sexist force pushing them out or keeping them down? Or on average, do women not pursue careers in high tech? I mean, there has been a movement over the last decade and more to get girls into STEM. Millions, if not billions of dollars have been spent on programs across different companies and different industries and so on, to encourage girls to get into STEM. So you would think that by now you would see the results and the fruits of all that labor, right, in those numbers going up. But year over year, time after time, the numbers might change, but the stats don't really change all that much. Why is that? Could it be personal choice? Could it be that there's, an inclination to, I don't know, raise a family oftentimes or pursue other things? Do they ever ask those questions? Do they ever admit that might be the possibility? No, it must be some kind of, external patriarchal force that's doing this. Okay, so your company is going to lose 2% women simply through automation. Okay, so how would you solve for that problem? I mean, are the women that are going to be lost suddenly unable to be trained into something else? If you know that their jobs are going to disappear because of, automation, then you still have them as employees, right? They could cross-train somewhere else. You wouldn't have to lose those women, right? Am I missing something?
From a skills perspective.
Thomas, weigh in here.
I mean, first of all, I think we all see the labor shortage on the one hand side and the change in the skill sets which is required. I think I read a study from the World Economic Forum last year that 1.1 billion jobs will be transformed by technology in the next 3 years even.
Jobs are transformed by technology every year. I mean, since the digital revolution, jobs have been transformed by technology every year. And even before then, jobs have been transformed by technology year over year. Wow, what a revelation. Thanks so much.
Which means there's a massive need to do that. But also with regards to diversity, I think one thing needs to be clear to everybody. We talk about the biggest problems here in Davos, like the climate crisis. We only can solve that with diverse set of perspective, diverse set of experiences and knowledge across the entire world.
No, you don't need diversity of knowledge and experience. You need to reduce pollution output. That's it. but you're not going to reduce pollution output because the countries that are producing the most pollution have absolutely no incentive or alternative to not produce pollution. That's it. It's not that difficult. It's very simple. So the climate crisis, such as it is, has been talked about and looked at and analyzed my entire life. I mean, by now, from when I was a kid, seeing how a greenhouse effect and everything else, there should be a hole in the ozone the size of Africa by now. Acid rain should be melting my skin every time I walk outside by now. The snows of Kilimanjaro should have disappeared entirely by now. And sea levels should have either risen or fallen, depending on which theory I was being told at the time, by about 17 feet. So, this has been looked at. There's plenty of perspectives. And it's a very simple thing. You have to reduce pollution output. And you're not going to, because the biggest countries doing so have no incentive to stop. So, thank you, Mike R. Hey, chat and Scribelight. Hey, Mike R. How's it going? Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. The ghost of Dr. Funkstein. Good morning. If I didn't already say hello.
So diversity actually will be the key for success to solve this. Also in an intergenerational aspect. I just yesterday had a nice panel with young talents and young entrepreneurs. And we need different thinking to solve these big problems in this.
Okay, now, credit where credit is due. He's talking about, setting aside the climate change part of it for a second, diversity of thought. Yes. Diversity of skills, perspectives, experience, education, and so on. Yes, that is what diversity, ideally, if you're going to be talking about it at all, should be focused on. But that's not what DEI is focused on, is it, guys? Okay, our first two speakers delved into it very specifically. It was about gender, right? First and foremost, genitals. Didn't talk about skills, didn't talk about experience. Just, we need people who look a particular way. That's the problem. That's the problem we have to solve for. At least our speaker here, number 3, is talking about, ability in some way, shape, or form. But he has to know that is not the focus of DEI, right?
So diversity is, for me, a key to success.
Most of you work across country lines. How do you keep the same level of commitment when we take a look at various countries with various different backdrops and labor forces?
I'll just sort of give our perspective. I totally agree with you. Our purpose as a bank is driving commerce and prosperity through our unique diversity. We believe that our proposition is that we can work with and for our clients and bring that diversity to the fore in solving their problems.
What does that mean? I know I'm not going to get it. I always ask for it. I'm never going to get it. Give me an example of what you're talking about. Give me an example where, however you define diversity, had an active and provable positive effect on your client's outcomes. That I would love that. Please give me one of those.
Representational diversity is important.
No, it is not. No, it isn't. Unless you're about to give an exception. Because representational diversity doesn't mean anything. Because if you're just representing a demographic, that does not mean that you actually have the talent, skills, or experience to do the job effectively. But okay, it's important. Is there a but? Please tell me there's at least a significant but coming.
So you need ethnic, generational, people with all levels of ability.
No. If you care about ability, leave out the aesthetics. Stop it. Representational diversity. Okay, you started off badly if you're going to start talking about ability, because representation has nothing to do with ability.
Gender, but what is really key is inclusion. I keep saying this: representational diversity is a necessary but not a sufficient condition to get diverse perspectives onto the table. So we've been doing a huge amount of work around the theme of inclusion.
Okay, like what? Like what have you done to increase inclusion? Because you're already moving away. I mean, this is the first step. You have to stay away from that first step. You can't linger too long on the diversity question, or else you get into some very murky areas. But now we're going to move on to something that, taken all by itself, you can operate in and sound like you're very virtuous and very talented and everything. Oh, yeah, inclusion. Let's not talk about how we get to diversity, because that's just, that's a secondary consideration. How do we include everyone?
And that becomes a much more cross-cutting theme. It's about this idea that everyone has to be included in decision-making process. And we actually measure inclusion. And the way we measure inclusion is not just around representational diversity, but do people feel free to be able to speak up? Do they have the tools to be able to do their job well?
Everyone is included in decision. Why? Why would you do that? You cannot have a kitchen full of cooks or head chefs. That doesn't make any sense. Everyone's included in decision-making? No. Everyone's input, sure, but the actual decision-making, that would make no sense. What are you talking about?
Do they have a real sense of belonging? So I think the idea of inclusion transcends cultures, generations, and gender.
How do you achieve it? Give me an example. I know I'm asking rhetorically and I'll almost never get an answer. Give me an example of an inclusive policy. What do you do? Okay, I think to my own company. Well, it's not my own company, but the company I work for. When it comes to, like, when I try to imagine, like, what is an example of inclusion? Well, once a week, every week, I am in a meeting. Previously to the pandemic, I was in an office, but now I'm on, a phone conference call. We have an update meeting with the entire team, the entire development team, and everybody goes around one after another in turn and says, this is what I'm working on. This is what's going, this is the problem I encountered this week, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone is required to participate because everybody has a turn around the table. And that's about it, And if somebody else at the table knows something about what I'm working on, or I know something about what they're working on, or we're working on something together, then we inform the boss and everybody else knows, so that if we encounter any problems or these peripheral issues that might come up, like, I'm going to do this, and then the IT guy says, oh, well, I'm doing an update on this system on that day, so maybe you want to wait a day or something, that kind of stuff. Okay. That to me would be an example of inclusion, where you just have a meeting where everybody has some input and everybody has a turn to talk and is expected to report on what they're doing. I'd take that. Can we get an example from you as to what you're talking about? How do you engender inclusion? How do you engender belonging in your company? What do you do specifically? What tips or advice could you provide?
Beata?
Multinational firms face additional challenges when it comes to diversity, in particular when it comes to gender, because they have subsidiaries located often in different time zones. That requires people working outside of standard office hours, because you need to take early morning phone calls or late night conference calls.
Yeah, I get up at 4 a.m. every morning to do my work, because most of our clients are on the East Coast or in countries elsewise that need the information I'm dealing with earlier than I operate on the West Coast. So yes, I know how that is. Okay, time zones. Okay, I can't wait to hear how time zones and gender are connected.
And that's particularly challenging for women who in the morning often have to send the kids to school and in the evening have to take care of many domestic tasks.
Yeah, men never see to their children. Men don't do anything. Men aren't coming home. Like, what? Okay, yeah, so it's all the women are victims. All the women are victims because of time zones. Men have absolutely no role in the raising of children or domestic maintenance. It's true, guys. It's true. We really are in the 1950s. Oh, what a glorious time to be alive.
And that means that often women are perceived as less able to be flexible. They are often given fewer responsibilities, less challenging roles. And academic research shows that working across time zones is associated with a greater gender wage gap in an organization.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so how would you solve for that problem? No, I'm seriously, like, okay, if that's the case, if it's just the case that women are going to be taking care of the kids in the morning and they're going to be doing domestic stuff at night, and time zones affect women, and this is just the way it is, okay, well, how would you solve for that problem? What would you do? What policies would you institute? All right. Okay. And so that's the difficulty in working with as a multinational. Time zones and women taking care of the kids and being 1950s housewives. Okay.
I think inclusion is actually the key topic. For us also as a company, we produce software for HR purpose, for employees, and how to do that. And inclusive design, but also inclusive language. It starts already with that. It's super important to bring the opportunities, equal opportunities to everybody.
Okay, I'm starting to like this guy. Not so much about the climate deal, because I was just like, whatever. But he's focusing on skills-based issues. Specifically, language, ability, perspective. Is he the stealth voice of reason in this nonsense? Just even slightly? I don't know, but my hopes are up. My fingers are crossed.
So also accessibility is a key aspect, because I also do believe actually that technology is an enabler for a lot of people to participate actually in the work. We should not underestimate that. When we talk about labor shortage, we need to first ensure that everybody...
Look at her face. What is going on? He's not mentioning gender. He's not saying women are inherently victims. But no. What?
He has the opportunity to participate. That's the reason why topics like inclusion in our software and accessibility are key standards for our teams.
If I may jump in here, digitalization, which sped up during the pandemic, poses additional challenges for older workers. And in particular, in emerging Europe, we see very clearly in various statistics that older workers have much weaker ICT skills than older workers in advanced economies.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. Okay. And how would you solve for this?
So this process of technological progress brings a risk of pushing older workers out of.
It always has. You're not saying anything that is new. As technology advances, people who cannot keep up or don't have any reason to keep up or are not born into that technology, generally speaking, have a harder time operating and maintaining and just participating in that kind of technological advancement, especially these days where everything's moving at such a clip. Your observation is not irrelevant, but it's also not anything surprising.
The labor force, precisely at the time when demographic challenges mean that we need to have people working longer.
Okay, so how would you solve for that? I hope we get to a point at which in the conversation we talk about solutions, because so far it's like, yeah, okay, that's true. People age out of being on the top of current technology. And
as you talk about the societal challenge, then who steps up and fixes this problem? Is there a role for employers, or is this a government-driven response that's required here?
I think both. I think reaction from both is needed. Firms will do that because it will be in their interest to keep workers and upskill them.
Okay, yes. Retrain, cross-train, yes. Okay. So where's the problem?
And government will want to do it simply because of pension sustainability. If you let these people leave the labor force, that's going to put greater pressure on pensions, and it's going to exacerbate the demographic challenge. We need to remember that emerging Europe is getting old before it's getting rich. These countries are undergoing demographic transition at the level of income per capita, which is much lower than the level at which advanced economies went through demographic transitions.
I represent a bank that's an emerging markets bank. So we're headquartered in UK, but across markets in Africa, Asia, Middle East. And if you go beyond the more developed world, I think the role of businesses in solving some of these problems becomes absolutely key.
Really, I would love to hear it, but yes, in some countries more than others, the number of people being born in order to work to support those who are becoming older is narrowing. So you've got a much larger aging population than you do a younger population who is growing up to, work and create the money necessary in order to prop up the social welfare that will support older people as they go on. So I think this is happening particularly in Russia and China right now, where the number of people that are retiring or becoming just elderly and need to be taken care of, that population is outpacing the amount of resources being generated by the younger generations to support them. And it's turning into a crisis. So, yeah, okay. How would business solve for these problems? We're all over the place. So, okay, what would business do?
At Davos, I saw the latest Edelman Trust Barometer that got released, and it's fascinating, right? Pretty much across markets, there is a growing view among employees and workers that they see the businesses taking a much stronger role when it comes to skills agenda, when it comes to topics related to DEI more broadly, the whole space around employability. So completely agree with Beata. This is a classic space. This is a space for collaboration and cooperation as opposed to competition. So I think public, private, education institution, politicians, businesses need to come together to solve it.
How? Solve what specifically? What? Oh my God. Yeah, just what we need. We need more corporations tailoring what people's lives should be. Of course, this is Davos. This is the World Economic Forums. Of course, they would think that. Could we get some specifics? I know you guys are all over the place. I hope the moderator asks for, could you give me one example? Because this is all just, so far it sounds like, for the most part, 3 people sitting on a stage trying to sound smart without really saying anything.
But I think businesses really, really need to start stepping up and thinking about some of these issues as well.
DEI in business. What do you think has been going on for the last at least 7 years in particular, if not the last decade? What businesses need to step up. Have you paid attention at all at what businesses have been doing as far as DEI programs? I mean, not that I'm giving them credit for having done it, but you're talking as though no one's done anything ever on this, and only if they would take this up. What are you talking about?
Thomas?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it needs to come together as a community across all the sectors. And I think what we also recognize now with the advancements of the internet and how we share knowledge, we need to have more open knowledge sharing and learning. And that's what we see with these massive open online courses, which I believe are amazing. And that's what we will see more.
Online course, open source information. Yeah, welcome to Wikipedia. What are you talking about?
Also, we will see more micro learnings now with the advancements of the devices, that if you have, 10 minutes, you're standing waiting for the train, use these 10 minutes in a smart way, learn something. And that's what we will see more. And
dude, where have you been? What? Have you heard of Skillshare or Domestika or what? Yes, in 10 minutes I can learn something. Well, yeah, if I trust the information that's being delivered to me, probably from some AI generated who knows what these days. And then what? I mean, I learned something. Is it applicable to a career? Does it help me in any way, shape, or form? Is it just a factoid? What?
We need to also ensure how to include more of these new concepts actually in a real lifelong learning concept. We talk so much about lifelong learning, but I think we now have everything at hand actually to do it. And to your point, we need to do it actually.
Like what?
But we also need to awaken aspirations, particularly among women, among minority groups, among people from different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yeah. Women and minorities, they just don't aspire to anything, guys. We really need to awaken those aspirations. I mean, okay, and let me back up a little bit. If we're talking on a global scale, then I don't know if awakening aspirations is the problem so much as the societies, cultures, and governments in some countries and how they treat women and or minorities for their population's sake. But okay, again, how would you do this? Give me an example. What do you recommend be done?
There's a very telling statistic from Germany. So typically, if you look at mathematics scores among teenagers, boys tend to do better than girls.
I thought it was girls always had earlier on at least, I always thought it was girls that had a better handle on mathematics than boys, generally speaking. Or maybe I'm just thinking of like schoolwork in general. But okay, all right, I will take your word for it. Boys do better at math than girls, okay?
But this gap is smaller in former Eastern Germany than in the former West Germany. And academic research shows that this is due to different aspirations. The legacy of socialists, the legacy of women being very active on the labor market.
Wait. Are you, wait, did I mishear her? Is she saying that math outcomes were better in Eastern Germany than in Western Germany? What? So what are you recommending be done then? What? No, I gotta go back. Sorry, I gotta go back. I want to listen to this again. Now let's see.
But this gap is smaller in former Eastern Germany than in the former West Germany.
So if only we could have the educational standards and regimen of Eastern Germany. Jesus.
And academic research shows that this is due to different aspirations. The legacy of socialists, the legacy of women being very active on the labor market meant that girls in that part of Germany had role models, and therefore they aspired to work in science, to work in innovation. Actually, East Germany had more female inventors than West Germany, if you look as a proportion of patents that were filed in the country.
Oh, well, gosh, yeah, if only, man, build that wall. Save Germany, build that wall. What the hell? Okay, so where would you like to start implementing the Eastern Germany philosophy of education? I'm just curious.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I want to just get into culture too, because we keep hearing about the upskilling that's required, that the workforce that you want to shape for the future is something you're going to have to create. And that comes back to the heart of a culture of investing. Mm-hmm. Do you think we've seen enough change in workforces to upskill? Is it really happening on a broad basis at this point?
Change in workforces in what way? Like evolving in technological usage? I hate too broad questions, right? There's just too abstract. And I mean, I guess it opens up for the possibility of anybody to say anything, but also you're going to get nothing. You're going to get nonsense.
I think developing a strong learning culture is absolutely key. You know, it links to the point around aspiration. It links to the point around how do you, because, you know, there is place for technical training, but the world of work is changing so quickly. Technologies are changing so quickly.
The fundamentals aren't changing all that much. You know, for every gadget and doohickey you have, you still have to have somebody who knows what they're doing, who can type things into stuff, who can talk to people, who has a knowledge base just walking around in the absence of a smartphone. Okay? I mean, you're still going to need skilled labor. You're still going to need knowledgeable and experienced people who have a handle on things. And it all depends on what we're talking about, but relying on technology too much is going to be a downfall for some companies and some people. And then it also depends on what kind of work we're talking about. If you're talking about like actual labor, the tools of putting a hammer into a hand and a nail into wood hasn't changed all that much in a long time. So I always ask this, what are you talking about? Give me an example.
That you need to supplement technical upskilling with upskilling on what I call human skills. So, you know, when we talk about the skills agenda within Standard Chartered, we talk about technical skills and human skills. Technical skills are digital, data, cyber. Human skills are being able to manage change and ambiguity. You know, how do you deal with building a true learning culture? What does inclusive leadership look like? And
I don't know. You tell me. You're on the stage. saying that you've implemented inclusive priorities into your company. Well, tell me, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do you activate that?
And it's some of those things that we need to dial up as well.
So and you are someone who's been doing that, right? So you could give us an example. For example, in my company, when this, and this happened, we changed our policies in order that we have more inclusion, and this was the result, right? Why is it always like pulling teeth to get somebody who's on a stage comporting themselves to be an expert in this, or someone who's practicing these things, to actually tell us what it is that they actually do?
Learning culture is only established when I believe there's a very strong tone from the top, and when you celebrate and recognize this. I've given this example at Davos this year.
An example? Oh, God. Be still my heart.
A lot. Every month, our CEO and I will send out emails to 15, 20, 25 top learners in the firm. You could be relatively junior from an organizational hierarchy, sitting in a market in Africa, getting an email from the CEO. And it's those kind of initiative that also, when you start celebrating learning, lifelong learning, that sets that strong learning culture.
An email from the CEO. An email from the CEO. And is this a personal email, or is it a form letter? The top 5, 10, 15, 25. Oh yeah, when you start increasing that number, it feels real special. Okay, so that is an email from the CEO. That is your first go-to example of growing inclusion in your company. Recognition and celebration. An email from... Wow. Gosh, I can send an email, and I'm not a CEO. Jesus. We looked at the statistics of the company, and you're up in this bracket, so here's an email. Congratulations. Wow. Golly. A blessing from on high. Boy, that's like a papal missive or something, isn't it? The CEO.
Yeah.
You see changes in the demand for various skills when you analyze data on online job ads. So for instance, during COVID in Germany, there was a big increase in demand for disruptive technologies, for knowledge of disruptive technologies such as AI, machine learning.
And of course, there was never any demand for those things before the pandemic. What does the time of the pandemic have to do with that? Disruptive technologies. What do you think a search engine is, or was at the time when it first popped up? Everything's... Okay, go on.
Among managers.
Sorry, I'm gonna back up. I cut her off. I'm gonna back up a second, just make sure I understand.
During COVID in Germany, there was a big increase in demand for disruptive technologies, for knowledge of disruptive technologies such as AI, machine learning, among managers. In the UK, if you look at what firms are looking when it comes to supply chain managers, it's green skills that are now very hot. These are all new things. These are all new skills we need to learn. And I think this demand is, people are going to respond to this demand. We just need to give them the tools to learn these new skills.
Yeah, that's called colleges and universities and things. Or I suppose you could train within the company, possibly. But yeah, AI, machine learning, green skills. Okay, and that has what to do with what? And okay, stipulating for the moment, you're absolutely right. They're hot right now. It's not a trend that's going to change in 6 months, but okay, it's really important. How would you implement that? What would you recommend happen? You know, so far it's been a long list of, it'd be nice if this happened, or we really need to focus on this, or we really need to solve for this. Okay, well, you guys are on the stage as the experts. You guys are running companies or executives therein. What are you doing that you would recommend as a first try, or what's been successful for you? Why? And our first active example is sending an email. Boy, I feel like I'm back in 1998.
Thomas, a specific question for you. I gather there's a thought process that you believe is necessary for management, that effectively you need to step away from human capital management to human experience management. Just
human capital management to human experience management. Are you working on a cruise line?
Flesh out that way of thinking.
I think we need to put the people in the center of all of our activities.
We need to put people at the center of all of our activities. Really? People? Oh, what were you doing beforehand? Well, I'd love to know what have you been doing otherwise?
The real individual one with all the strengths, and that's also, we talk a lot about skills and upskilling, but I think it's way more. You need to consider the whole human being, experiences, passions, interests, because these are the strengths somebody brings together with his whole self.
Well, they really focused in on his hands there. Whole self. Okay. Now I'm noticing he didn't say race. He didn't say ethnicity. He didn't say age. Again, he's focusing on those intangibles. Okay.
And this is something, if you really think about the whole self of an individual,
yeah,
also for HR and for leaders, it's way more important with a very personalized way how to work with these people. And that's different. So we go.
He's talking like people are some kind of like alien race or something. Or how do you work with the individual of people? Like, do you work in an office? What? I mean, or does your HR department just only look at statistics? I mean, what? Yeah, working with people. Okay, well, give me an example. What would you recommend an HR department do to focus on the whole person? What kind of process? What change would you make to the classic situation into an advanced one?
Away from human capital management, from a pure transactional process, which for sure we can fulfill a leave request or something like that. But that's not what we need to do as leaders. We need to, as leaders, provide the environment that everybody can unleash the full potential of his individual personality.
How?
And that's a rethinking. And then also thinking about the entire process, not as a process, but as an experience, as a journey an individual goes through when he gets attracted to a company, when he's getting developed in a company. But also, if somebody's leaving the company, it's actually the best advocate, usually, if you do that right, for this company. It's the best ambassador, if you do it right, to consider those aspects as well. And that's also where we need to collect sentiment and feedback along the entire journey to constantly improve your processes. That's what we believe with human experience management, that it's going away from a transactional process to really a personalized, individualized topic for a whole self as a person itself.
That sounds like a lot of nonsense. Unless you've got something you'd like to put up as an example, bring your whole self to work and so on. Maybe I just want to come to work, do my job, get paid, and go home. I mean, what's wrong with that? Why do you, the company, need to know about my passions and my interests and my whole self? Maybe I don't want my entire life to be entwined with my job. Maybe that's none of your business. I mean, I would love to ask this guy, and I really, really, really hope the moderator gets there. What does he mean? Give an example. How is it being done in the status quo way, and how would you like to see it be done? Or what are you doing? Because so far, it sounds more insidious than it sounds productive.
Can I just very quickly add to that? You know, I say this very often. We are the first generation of employees or workers where the technology we experience in our personal life is better than the technology we experience in our work life.
The technology we experience in our personal life is better than the technology we experience in our work life. It's all about function and utility. What do you mean?
It's a big shift, right? I mean, for those of us who started working a long, long time ago, if you had a really important presentation, you would come to office over a weekend because technology was just much better. And actually, this idea of how do we give that consumer grade experience to employees has to be at the heart of design. And that.
How do we give a consumer grade experience to employee? Why would you do that? What benefit does that? I'm trying to understand. I want to know what they're talking about. They seem to be very focused on this. Okay. And I'm coming at this just as, Joe Schmo. I effectively, not literally anymore, but work in an office, right? I log in to my computer, my workstation. I do my job, which is a lot of typing and spreadsheets and sending things and all the other stuff. Okay. And then I'm done for the day. All right. Now my job isn't everybody else's job, but if we're, what level are you talking about? Are you talking about like retail level? Are you talking about office level? What do you mean make the employee experience like a customer experience?
That links to the learning agenda as well. People will consume content, have that aspiration to consume it. If it is driven in a way or delivered in a way which is personalized, which is easy to access, feels modern.
Like an email from the CEO.
And it's closer to how they experience technology in their personal life.
Like how? You want your employees to feel like consumers at the same time? Well, I mean, I guess that would increase your consumer base. I don't understand. I don't understand.
But of course, we are facing a huge shift in the way we work, also when it comes to the hybrid world, right? I think gone is Monday through Friday in the office. And I think we need to be aware.
Speak for yourself, lady. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, physically speaking, yeah, I might not have to go to the office, but there is a chunk of my day, every day, that is not my life.
Aware of what this means for diversity and inclusion. Now, if you remember COVID, we all worked remotely.
Not all of us, but many of us were forced to by who again?
And that was a very different experience for men and women.
It was a different experience for people. What? I'm loving this. Okay, tell me how going from a office environment to a home remote environment somehow damaged or inflicted more harm or trauma on women than it did men.
Typically, women were the ones who spent more time on childcare. Typically, they were the ones who were working at the kitchen table.
What? What were the men doing by comparison?
While their partners had typically a dedicated office.
Right. Yeah. Every guy in a house has his own office. And the women were relegated to working from the kitchen. Oh, man. Yeah. All right. So they were both working remotely. And
it was women who were more likely to think about quitting. And women actually early in the pandemic quit in larger numbers than men.
Because they didn't have a home office. And because they had children to take care of. While the men had their own private clubhouse and didn't need to deal with any of that stuff. Okay.
And, in some cases, that was a family decision to prioritize the husband's work simply because he was making more money.
So maybe it was an economic consideration and not a sexist consideration. Maybe it was just a pragmatic decision of division of labor, who could maintain an income, who could focus on it, and so on, because there were other priority. Yeah. Again, whose fault was all of this?
But interestingly, you observed similar pattern among households where the wife made more money. Even in those households, the wife who was a better earner took more time, spent more time with the kids.
Oh my God, you mean she made either a personal choice to do so, or, and here's the thing, who shut down all the daycare? Who shut down all the schools? What is the pragmatic necessity of a situation like that? When you have to judge, like, okay, am I going to spend my time doing a job or taking care of the kids who are not allowed to go to school? Am I going to have to help with the education of my children? Or am I going to have to try to do a job, a full-time job at the same time, where one parent has to take that responsibility and the other one is suddenly saddled with a whole bunch of things they didn't plan on having to do because somebody told them they couldn't send their kids to school anymore. Somebody told them that the daycares are shut down. Yeah, where does this start from? Have you ever been running a household yourself before? Did you, by any chance, I'd be surprised, did you have the same kind of burdens befall you during the pandemic as your average mother, household runner, family, I wonder? Maybe you had the money where you didn't need to worry about certain things, huh?
And, while making the family decision to prioritize the husband's career would seem rational, there is a problem. There is a gender wage gap. There is a glass ceiling out there.
Oh, for crying out loud. Why were the parents having to apportion their time to their children more so at that time than times previous? Why? Why? Was it choice or was it necessity? Huh? There's a wage gap. There's a glass ceiling. Oh, even in the households where the wife was earning more money? Oh, how are you sitting on a stage right now? How are you in charge of things again? What series of events took place to put you on that stage and in the position and the title that you possess? Was it hard work? Did you have to earn it? Did you have to decide whether or not, am I going to spend time raising my family or focusing on my career? Oh, okay. And what?
So we've put skilled women behind during the pandemic.
No, we haven't. And yeah, no skilled men had their feet cut out from under them by the quote unquote the pandemic.
Simply because while their male colleagues could excel, could show their bosses how well they were doing, they were not wasting time for the commute, women were carrying a bigger burden on the home front. And
why was that? Who did that? Who made that necessary? Your connect the dots game stops after 2 points? Come on.
And I think we haven't fully recovered from that setback.
No, we haven't. Obviously, look at the economy. We have not recovered from that. And God knows what damage has been done to the next generation of students and kids having their entire lives stunted for no good reason for 2 years. Their social interactions, their educations, and onward. Yeah, entire careers were cut off at the knees, both men and women, by the policy decisions of the governments of this world, effectively, that proved to be absolutely disastrous with no real return. But whatever.
I think we've touched a lot on the necessity for flexibility. So I want to ask you what happens going into an economic downturn where companies are already drawing up lists of staff numbers to reduce. The balance of power is subtly shifting back to the employer in that context.
Oh, I thought the balance of power was shifting in the DC universe. Sorry, Dwayne.
How do employers then need to think about the demands that they have on employees, the days they come in, how many days they should be, where they should be working from?
Actually, the question is, how can you take that statement, which was completely genderless, and make women the biggest victims of whatever you're going to talk about? That's really the challenge here.
I mean, from our perspective, we believe in pledge to flex, in giving flexibility to the employees, because we have highly skilled and highly educated people in the workforce. And we also need to actually fight to attract those people. And that means flexibility is a key aspect. So we trust that they take the right decisions when they come actually to the office and when not. And we clearly see in areas like when you do an innovation workshop, you want to be there in person. It's unleashed energy. But I also, to your point, giving flexibility also in aspects when you want to work on a dedicated document to be at home, also to balance the private life and the work life in a better meaning. And we need to provide this opportunity to employees. And
like how? Again, just what do you... Give me an example of a flexible policy that your company takes advantage of, right? Or a flexible option that you give to your employees. Give me something.
And I believe this is super important in this war for talent. I mean, with all what we read, we still have labor shortage, and we need to fight to get the best talent. And that's the reason we need to have a super attractive work environment.
Labor shortage. I'm seeing companies laying people off by the thousands, depending on what company we're talking about. There's not a labor shortage. What? Okay, well, okay. This is the problem with a panel that is effectively talking on a global scale, because I don't know. Globally, I don't know. I only have my perspective effectively from more or less America, North America, etc. So, labor shortage, where? Is there? Do you have an example country or an example situation, something, so I can dig my teeth into something here
to succeed in this market?
75% of our global workforce now across 43 markets is on formal flexible working, hybrid working arrangements. We have found very little difference between men and women taking up flexibility. So this idea of the fact that, it's just women who are signing up for hybrid, we've not seen that, right? And I'm completely with Beata to say, over lockdown, women had to take disproportionate amount of burden of home responsibility care.
Disproportionate to what? Disproportionate. Okay.
Responsibility. But in the data we are finding that there has been a subtle societal shift, and men have got more engaged in issues of childcare, and they have had a really high take-up of hybrid.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's an admission I didn't think I'd hear. I wonder what, was it Beata? I wonder what Beata has to say about that. Oh my gosh, men taking responsibility for their families, because obviously taking care of the children is not nearly as important, right, as earning the money that supports and feeds the children and puts a roof over their heads, etc. Okay.
A couple of things I will say. We've been very clear on moments that matter where people need to come together physically. So we've said hybrid is not fully office or fully home. And there are certain moments that matter that you need to come together.
Yeah, that's why it's called hybrid, because it's not all of one thing or all of another. It's a hybrid, yeah.
And ideate and innovate and solve problems. And we've been very, very clear that in designing those moments that matter, we've been quite inclusive in our thinking.
Like what? What is a moment that matters in your company? Give me an example. God forbid is it sending an email?
But the other thing that we have done, and I think all companies need to do, is to start evolving the data sets by which they measure progress. So when we came to our year-end promotion round, we always did diversity checks, external, internal.
Diversity checks? Like what did you check for insofar as diversity was concerned in your company? I know she's not going to tell us. I would love to know, what were the check boxes for that one?
It checks. We also did a correlation with people's working arrangements, just to be very sure that people who had signed up for additional days of working from home were not disadvantaged in being up for promotions.
Because ultimately, either they got their work done or they didn't, regardless of where they were at, right? If I did my job and the requirements of my job were fulfilled, whether I was at the office or at home, and there's no functional difference between the two, why would you penalize anyone who worked from home? What?
So look, nobody really has the crystal ball. I mean, there's been a lot of conversations to say 10 years of flexible working, 5 years, we'll realize it was a disastrous experiment. my personal view is flexibility is here to stay. It's become a core part of the employment proposition, especially when it comes to highly skilled workforce. But it's incumbent upon businesses to ensure that the program is designed in a way that it does not erode culture, it does not make workplaces less inclusive, and it does not erode the traditional apprenticeship model, which is really, really important in businesses like ours.
Culture is going to change. There's no way to avoid a change in culture from a exclusive office environment where people are interacting with each other and the little foibles here and there and how people are positioned or how they communicate or how they move around or how they decorate their desks and on. There is no way to avoid a change in culture when you start moving out of the office, either in a hybrid situation or in a fully transition situation to remote working. Like my company, it was kind of a surprise. I think it was a surprise to everybody. As the circumstances changed, as we were told we could no longer congregate where we used to go to work, we discovered, thankfully, that nearly everyone's job in my company could be replicated in both the effectiveness and efficiency and output at home as it was at the office. There really wasn't that big of a barrier. We were lucky as a company that we could do that. We were very lucky. And as far as I know, because now we're not leasing some giant office space, we have a relatively small office that effectively just holds everybody's workstations, right? And a couple of screens you can go log into if you need to on an emergency or something. But the amount of money that my company's now saving on rental space and everything else, far and away a better situation than what we had in the years previous. Very, very fortunate in that way. So culture is going to change because we're not interacting with each other in the same way. You're not going to avoid that. I don't know how you effectively maintain that. Your culture will adapt to the situation, and at some point you'll find a new way of having a culture. But I'll tell you what, if celebration of someone's accomplishments is an email from the CEO, I'm not sure that's culture. That sounds more like condescension.
Yeah, do you think there is a chance of rollback around flexibility as we go into a slightly less tight labor market?
Not when they've seen the savings they can have on just physical spaces, parking spaces, leasing of office space, equipment, and people's desires to cut down on their own expenses as a result. I mean, gas prices go through the roof. Do you really want to be burning away half your paycheck just commuting to work? If you don't have to? No. Or car maintenance or anything else? No. Why would you if you don't have to? So, yeah, I know hybridization or remote working, whatever you want to call it, at this point, it's here to stay just because it increases the bottom line. And when it can, it improves everybody's life and expenses.
I don't think so. I think flexibility is here to stay simply because flexibility is associated with higher productivity. You see it very clearly in the data that people use a vast chunk, if not majority, of the time they save on commuting, they use this time to work.
Yes.
And you see it across countries. We've done surveys in emerging Europe, in Western Europe, and you clearly see that about 80% of people report higher productivity during working from home hours.
Oh, 80% of people? You didn't break that down by gender? I'm shocked.
But of course, there is the issue that you raised of monitoring the data by gender. Right? There are two.
For just a second, I thought we could get through one segment with this lady without her bringing up a gender question, but nope. My heart is shattered.
Things happening now. On the one hand, we had great resignation, which means that childcare may become more scarce and more expensive. And that's going to put pressure on women to spend more time working from home. On the other hand, we have an economic downturn. And as you mentioned, companies may be drawing up lists of redundancies. And that may mean that women who spend more time at home, put less face time at work, may be disadvantaged when it comes to layoffs. And
yeah. Circumstances and making choices for yourself may have effects on other parts of your life. Choosing family over career, if you can imagine that. Well, guess what? Don't worry. The man isn't doing anything. He's just in his office playing video games. He's not working for a living. He's not making the money that's going to, feed the children or put a roof over their heads. Yeah, men are just layabouts. That's all they are. Well, the women, thank you, Chicago Mike. Scribe, my commute was 40 miles each way. Then COVID sent us permanently home. I don't miss that commute. I do not blame you at all. That's insane. And if they weren't, reimbursing you for mileage or gas or something, especially these days, holy cats. Again, Chicago Mike, thank you. I love working from home. I do too. I mean, I've been very fortunate in that, when I've told this story before. My first job out of college was no great shakes. And the company had decided that they were going to move basically all the operations out of state. And when there was a time limit on effectively when my job would suddenly disappear. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I have to find a new job. But I don't drive, and I'm not really looking forward to a big commute. So I said to myself, I want to find a job that is within walking distance of my apartment. So I went onto Google Maps, and I put in my home address at the time, and then I just put in business in the search bar. And all of a sudden, there's all these little map pips showed up around my apartment, right? And I said, okay, 2-mile radius. What are the companies in a 2-mile radius of where I'm living? And I sent my resume to those companies, to those offices, looking for a job in one of those offices, because I didn't want to have to go any further than about 2 miles worth of walking on a particular day to go to work. And lo and behold, my perseverance paid off, and I found a job that was within walking distance. And for like the next 3 or 4 years, I got to walk to and from work every day, right? And even though the office moved a couple of times, it didn't become any more than maybe a half an hour bus ride or something, because my boss wanted to keep the company relatively situated in the same spot for everybody's convenience. So I really lucked out, but it was because I made that decision. I said, this is the condition I require for myself of everything else, because I sent my resume to companies that covered all types of different things. But the one thing was, I don't want to have to commute any more than I absolutely have to. So, but 40 miles a day, geez Louise. All right. We got about 15 minutes left on my hour-and-a-half real-time clock. We'll give them a few more minutes here, obviously, and see if anything more interesting happens, or if it's just more long, abstract, broad questions and how women are most affected.
I think that it is absolutely crucial to monitor the data just like you do that.
There's 2 points I want to pick up on here. Number one, the term, the Great Resignation. Can we retire it yet, or is it still happening, Thomas?
I think we're at a time where I think every company on this planet is really fighting for the right people. And that's what we continue doing. And I also believe that sometimes these terms, I have to say, it's a little bit sometimes also where I believe we need to deduct it a little bit of what it really means. Because if some people are leaving the one company, it's actually an opportunity for another company to attract amazing talent as well. A lot of people aren't leaving by their own choice. A lot of people being laid off and fired right now by some of the biggest companies. The most rich companies in the world are laying thousands of people off. You want to talk about that first, and not the Great Resignation? I absolutely do believe that also in this current market, as we laid out, we cannot stop in thinking about what are the right attractive models, like flexibility, like other aspects of work, to also retain the best talent and also to motivate them again. Because I think the last couple of years were hard for everybody in all aspects.
Oh, you don't say. Really? You think the last couple of years were hard for everybody? Golly, yeah. Well, yeah.
First we had the Corona crisis. Now we have a devastating war and the impacts. So I think the last 3 years have put a lot of burden on everybody.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. That's a very bold statement you had. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Again, it was mostly expressway driving. It took me 41 minutes each way. 40 way. Good gravy, dude. You know, that's like an hour and a half out of your life every day just going from one place to another. I'm glad that you're able to work remotely. I'm glad that worked out for you. That's like I say, I've been very fortunate. I saved for my well, I guess my first job out of college wasn't the office job. I was working retail. That was a commute. That was a commute, and it was like 2 buses or something because, again, I don't drive. But I'm very happy for you, Mike. I'm very glad that worked out for you.
And it's very important for us to keep the motivation, keep the positive spirit. When I'm walking here after this week in Davos, I get a sense of cautious optimism, which is good. And I hope that this sense is also sprinkling through the world again, because I believe we need an optimistic view to the future and motivation for the teams.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure your optimism. How much do you make again? If you lose your job, what's your golden parachute? Okay.
Thomas, anecdotally, if you just think about your own organization, are you still hearing I'm resigning and I'm just going to sail off into the sunset, I'm going traveling, I don't have anything else lined up, I might just take some time off? Are you hearing that as much as we're hearing it several months ago? Wait. Is that what people were? Who can do that? Oh, I'm just going to take some time off. I've never had it in my head that I could just take some time off of work. I mean, maybe this is a European thing. I don't know, but maybe it's just the way that America is structured in certain ways. If I'm not working, I don't have insurance. If I don't have insurance and something goes sideways, I'm screwed. That's kind of the overarching Damocles sword over my head every time I think about I'll just resign. Not that I think about resigning, but in that sense, is that what people were doing? I'm just going to take some time off. I'm going to go travel. What does it take to go travel? Money. What? Did I miss something? Was the Great Resignation just everybody taking a holiday?
No, we don't hear that anymore that much.
Not that much? At what proportion? What's been your retention rate over the last 3 years? Okay.
Look, I'm not even very sure a lot of the Great Resignation was simply because I was walking to the sunset, right? I mean, let's be honest.
What?
Some of the onset of the Great Resignation was also a lot of pent-up sort of demand from a movement. So 2 years, people just stayed still, trying to deal with this big humanitarian crisis, which affected pretty much everyone in some way or the other. Right?
Or just go with me on this now. The Great Resignation was, at least in some proportion, a matter of people not being allowed to work, and they were close enough to retirement age that they decided to cash in because otherwise they'd just be sitting there without an income. Is that what you're talking about? I don't know. I'm confused. What was this how it was in the rest of the world, the Great Resignation? I'm just going to take some time off and travel during a pandemic? What?
Right. So I think the initial bit of coming back from COVID and the increase in resignation we saw, there was a little bit of that pent-up sort of demand of people. The other bit was, as you say, evaluating life and options, right? And I always keep saying, when we talk about flexibility in our company, flexibility is not just where you work. It's also when you work, how you work, and why you work.
I work for money. If you've got flex hours or I can work from home or whatever, okay, why I work for the paycheck.
A lot of people started thinking, is this the company I want to work for? And it wasn't always because I don't want to work for anyone. It was because, I'm judging you in the way you have responded during COVID. I'm judging you in the way you've thought of your customer and your employees. I'm judging you in the way you are thinking about the climate challenge and the role that we have to play. So
well, no, I'll admit that some of the more recent generations, that's probably some really big ticket item on their minds when they think about a company they want to work for or are working for. But yeah, can you imagine working for a company and then not liking the way that they either treat you or their policies or something else and thinking, boy, maybe I should find a job with someone else? Yeah, that kind of thinking only just came about during the pandemic. If you can believe it.
I think the Great Resignation was also as a result of people really evaluating, is this the company I want to be part of?
Or were they allowed to work? Or were they being handed down mandates of behavior that they didn't agree with by their employer? You want to bring in any other factors that might have led into this? Right? People's entire careers and livelihoods being thrown into the gutter because they weren't allowed to do their jobs if they didn't, just acquiesce to mandates by any chance. You want to talk about that aspect of it? Or people that, even that aside, being told by the government, your company must shut down. You cannot run your business anymore until we say so. People can't get a haircut. People can't go get a hamburger. You're not allowed to run your company or to pay your employees because we say so. You want to talk about any of that at all? As far as I can tell to this point, at no point in the course of any of this conversation has anybody brought up the forces that were not at the whim of the employee or employer in leading to this disaster.
Some of that is tapering down, but it's not going to fully go away. I think there has been something pretty fundamental that's happened, the years of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's called lockdown. It's summarized simply, lockdown. Will you bring up lockdown?
A lot of people are being far more intentional about the choices they make, which includes the employer that they choose to work for.
Yes, let me turn to you. The Great Resignation, is it still happening by numbers?
Probably not, but
probably not.
You think about inertia. There's a lot of inertia. People stay in jobs they don't like, they don't enjoy, because it takes a lot of effort to look for a new employment. So if there is a shock that suddenly means that you lose your job,
or you're required not to have a job by somebody else,
as was the case with many services workers during the pandemic, then you are forced to rethink what you want, how you want to live, how you want to spend your time.
No. I am not allowed to decide how to spend my time. I'm not allowed to decide where to work. I'm not allowed to decide where to put my focus. I am at the behest of the government during that time. I'm at the behest of the employer during that time, whether or not I am allowed to have a job, or I have to acquiesce to a medical mandate that I may not agree with in order to have a job. There was very little room for choice during that period of time. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm not sure if you're willing to admit to that. Why are you guys so seemingly just like insanely trying to avoid the obvious? At no point have any of you brought up the factor of a lack of choice, of government intervention in people's lives. This is, of everything else during this talk so far, that is the one thing that has just, three different people from three different businesses, from three different parts of industry and so on. And even the moderator, none of them are willing to broach the subject of why people's lives were destroyed.
And for instance, in the UK, we've seen a lot of people 55 plus leaving the labor market and actually not coming back.
Why would they? If they were in the labor market and then they weren't allowed to go outside, if they had the opportunity to cash in their pensions in the UK specifically, why wouldn't they?
I want to pick up on one of the most interesting stories that's captured my attention in recent weeks, and this is regulators stateside. The FTC is considering making non-compete clauses illegal. So all of these lockup periods, effectively, where you're handcuffed for a period of time, they're looking at doing away with that. The exception here could be on the sale of a business, for instance. What's the potential of legislation like this, do you think, across the world, beyond the United States, and what impact would it have on the labor force?
I don't know how interested I am in that question, and I've only got a couple of minutes left until the end of the my self-imposed time limit. So, if there is some desire for me to continue looking at this, let me know in the comments. For reference, I am at 2654 on the video, but I'll take a minute here for you guys. See what you have to say. Super Koopa Gaming, these buzzwords, buzzword burritos they are serving up have no filling at all. There's no point being made seemingly at all. Again, when I watch something like this, yeah, you're right. It is a lot of fluff, a lot of words with no substance. But as I've just sort of alluded to, oftentimes it's what's not being said that I find probably more interesting and more telling. Right? It's that negative space in the conversation. It's the elephant in the room that no one's willing to even broach on. The word lockdown never came up. The word mandate never came up. It's just like there's just, willful ignorance. No, this whole factor of what caused this in the first place. Oh no, it's just setting that aside. Let's not discuss it. Let's not learn anything from that, right? We're talking about learning things, about reflecting on things. Well, let's take a look at exactly what companies and governments did over the previous 3 years, what effect that had on people, and what we can learn from that for the future. God forbid anybody bring up something like that in this discussion. But oh well, I guess it just doesn't matter. Amy Minty, government interference is usually a bad thing. Make a law to force businesses to not be able to have contracts. Blah. Yeah. Why was there a great resignation? Nobody on that stage is willing to ask or even broach the why of these things. Just like, oh, well, the women had to handle the children more than the men, and that's unfair. Okay, why were the children around so much? What put the children and time managing the children at the forefront as compared to prior to these events? What exactly happened? Why was that necessary? Why was that a decision that had to be a pragmatic necessity in households? Who put them in that position? Black's Law Dictionary. Uh-oh. Do we have sovereign citizens in the chat? Uh-oh. The only time I ever heard about Black's Law Dictionary, aside from the copy that I think my boss had in his office or something, is it was always cited by sovereign citizens arguing with police officers for traffic stops and things like that. I never heard about or heard someone mention or reference Black's Law Dictionary more than sovereign citizens. Let's see. Scrappy. I know one lady who met her clients at her home, Jack. Now she doesn't need a salon and moved sideways. There you go. Necessity is the mother of invention. When you're restricted from doing something you know how to do, and that's your vocation, that's your trade, that's how you make your money. As Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life will find a way. Life will find a way. Let's see. Who else? Anybody else? Anybody else want to have something to say before I wrap things up here? I'm looking through the comments. I just love, I know I've talked about this before. I just love the fact that you guys are having these conversations with each other that are just so enriched, and I love that. I really do. Mike Savage, that whole video just showed how out of touch with reality these people are. Well, either out of touch with reality or in active denial of bringing up certain subjects because they don't want to go down that road. Because it's entirely possible that they would end up vilifying, and in some cases rightfully so, the very people in the room with them. Right? They would risk going against the orthodoxy that drove all of these disasters into existence that they've been discussing. Right? Or that people have supported with their money or their reputations or their company names. Thank you, Mr. Jiggletrunk, for the happy, smiley, lovely Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Whoa-wee. Whoa.
There's a tailed featured Dogcat Fox for you. Thank you so much. But with that, everybody, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. If for some reason you'd like me to continue with this one in a supplemental that I might do on a Monday or a Tuesday, which is just tomorrow or something, maybe not on Valentine's Day, who knows? Let me know in the comments. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way out if you would. I am told that somehow helps with the algorithm or something. Something else that I used to mention quite often, but I've slacked off on it. If there is a content creator out there whose work that you appreciate, whether it's me or anybody else, please be sure to share their content out on social media where you can, because Lord knows YouTube does a very bad job at it, and you guys are our best algorithm. And when you do, and if you do, if you're able to, at least in my case, if you can tag me in your tweet where you shared stuff out, I would appreciate it, because then I'll know you've done so, and I can thank you personally, because I really do appreciate it. And believe it or not, most creators out there really do appreciate it when you share their stuff, and it really helps if you tag them in the tweet so they know it. I've gotten more positive feedback and made so many connections over the last few years. Just like, I like this creator, whatever they're doing, whether it's gaming videos or documentaries or whatever. If I like their stuff, I let other people know I like it, and I let the creator know that I'm letting people know. And I've made some connections with people I otherwise wouldn't have, which is great. So do that too, because trust me, you guys are the biggest help YouTube content creator, or any particular content creator, could ask for when it comes to that. Keeverdam, thank you so much. Just curious, did you see pics of my mom's cat? She got a cone on her head due to urinary issues. Oh no, did she have the cone of shame? I haven't. I turned off my, I usually turn off my Twitter while I'm doing a stream, because I'm always paranoid about interference from other apps running when I'm trying to broadcast. Because like if I turned on Firefox right now, my audio would suddenly go kablooey. I don't know why that is, but somehow, for some reason, if I'm running StreamYard on Chrome and then I suddenly turn on Firefox to look something up, my audio goes bleh. So I don't know what happens with Twitter, because Twitter is now just an adjunct of the Edge browser from Microsoft. So I get paranoid. Either way, long story for a short question. I haven't yet, but I will look right after the show and take a look at Poor Kitty Cat. That's no fun for Poor Kitty Cat. But either way, everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate your attendance and your participation. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the fundraisers pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. We all really do appreciate it. Hope you all guys. You can't be all guys. Some of you are women. I hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. I hope you have a good week ahead of you. I hope those of you that are watching the Super Bowl have fun with whatever the sports ball game is, and whoever wins, etc., whether it's Team A or Team B. I'm rooting for your team somehow. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.